Dear friends, in today's times, we have often heard words like growth and development. Let us begin the chapter on economic development by understanding the concept of growth first. The objectives of this session are to understand the concept of economic growth and to get an idea regarding how countries grow. Now, let us see the introduction. Dear friends, we may have often heard words like growth and development in discussions on television, in election manifesto of various political parties, or may have read about these in the newspapers. Have you ever wondered what these words mean? Are the two words synonymous or do they have different meanings? Can we measure growth and development of a region or a nation? What indicates growth and development? Let us see how the concept of growth and development have developed over the years. Since the Second World War, economists have attempted to answer these questions from time to time. Let us look at the meaning of growth and development. To understand the meaning of growth and development, let us have a look at some statistics provided here. According to the information provided by the Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India and Directorate of Economics and Statistics in the publication Agricultural Statistics at a Glance, the food grain production in India rose from 52 million tons in 1951-52 to 265 million tons in 2013-14, which means there is a considerable rise in food production. Let us now have a look at the number of undernourished people in India and China. Friends, look at the data here. Between the period 1990 and 92, in India, approximately 209 million people were undernourished. However, this figure did come down to 195 million people in the period between 2014 and 16. In China, in the period between 1990 and 92, there were approximately 300 million people who were undernourished, while this figure drastically reduced to 134 million people in the period between 2014-16. Thus, there is a relatively lesser reduction in undernourishment in India between the periods 1990-92 to 2014-16 as compared to China. Hence, we must ask, why is it so? If agricultural production has increased significantly, why do we not see a significant reduction in undernourishment? Area of production and yield of total pulses in India is also presented here. Let us look at the statistics. In the year 1980-81, production of pulses was 10.63 million tons and the yield per hectare was 473 kgs. This increased to 18.34 million tons of production in the year 2012-13 and the yield increased to 781 kgs per hectare. However, the figure shows that the per capita net availability of pulses to India's people has declined. If the production of pulses has increased from 10.63 million tons to 18.34 million tons between 80-81 and 2012-13, and the per hectare productivity has little less than doubled, then why is there a decline in the per capita consumption of pulses, dear friends, as indicated in the diagram? Is this increase in production not enough to maintain per capita consumption? The statistics on increase in production indicate a quantitative growth, but dear friends, an improvement in the consumption and nourishment statistics may call for proper distribution of food grains, affordable prices of food grains, reduction in wastages. Dear friends, we waste a lot of food grains in the distribution system as well as in the cooking systems. Production in proportion of increase in population must also be verified. And then we must ponder upon the ways in which these can be attained. We now proceed to understand the meanings of growth and development in economics. What is growth? In a simple language, growth is the increase in the quantity of economic parameters which ultimately lead to an increase in national output, capital accumulation, which includes new investments in land, physical equipment, human resources, in a way increase in wealth. Third, growth in population must arise, because a growth in population leads to an increase in labor force. At the same time, we must also witness technological progress. Thus, factors which contribute to growth are: number 1, increase in employment of labor; second, improvement in technology; third, enhancement in infrastructures; fourth, increase in investment; fifth, increase in pace and speed of production; sixth, better utilization of factors and resources; seventh, increase in demand for goods and services. Now, let us check the definition of economic growth given by Professor Simon Kuznets. Economic growth for a country is a long term rise in capacity to supply increasingly diverse economic goods to its population. This growing capacity based on advancing technology and the institutional and ideological adjustments that it demands. The three components of this definition can be summarized as: first, growth manifests in the form of increased national output. Higher national output means more goods for existing population as well as availability of goods for the increase in population. Second, advanced technology. Advanced technology helps to produce more output. It is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. In order to realize the potential of growth which comes about with changing technologies, adjustments must be made in attitudes, institutions and ideologies. This is a very important characteristic given by Simon Kuznets. Kuznets also isolated 6 characteristic features of the historical growth process of the developed world. The 6 characteristics can be classified under 3 major variables. First, 2 economic variables, under which one is high rates of growth of per capita output and population, and second is high rates of growth in factor productivity, especially labor productivity. The second set of variables pertain to structural transformation variables, under which the first is high rates of structural transformation in the economy, and the second is high rates of social and ideological transformation. The third set of variables pertain to international spread of growth, under which the first is propensity to reach out to other countries for cheaper resources and markets to sell goods, and the second is the spread of growth to limited segments of the population. Let us now look at some statistics here. In the table here, we see that the growth rates of net national income are shown at constant prices. The constant prices are shown for the 2004-5 series. Let us check the growth rate of net national income at constant prices. Looking at the table, we find that in the year 1951-52, it was 3.5%, which increased to 5.9% in 1981-82 and to 6.5% in 2011-12, and it was estimated around 7.6% for the year 2015-16. Hence, we see that the growth of national income has taken place. Does this mean that per capita income also rises at the same rate? Let us check the table again for the per capita income growth rate at constant prices. Looking at the table, we see that in 1951-52 it was 1.8%, in 1981-82 it was 3.9%, in 2011-12 it was 5.1%, and in 2015-16 it was estimated at 6.2%. Hence, we can say that per capita income has also grown, but a little less than the national income. Why is it so? We need to ask ourselves these questions. If you look at the table for annual growth rates of real gross value added at factor cost by industry origin at constant prices, with a base series of 2004-5, we see that there is a substantial increase in the growth of real output. In the year 1951-52, it was 2.3%. In the year 1961-62, it increased to 3.1% and further to 5.6% in the year 1981-82, 6.7% in 11-12, and it was estimated at 7.3% for the year 15-16. Look at the Dear friends, the data which we have just analyzed indicate a substantial growth of the Indian economy since independence, because all the tables which we have seen are indicators of growth of the Indian economy. Now, the questions emerge as: does a satisfying growth rate of national income mean satisfying state of education, public health and gender equality? What should be done to enhance the spread of economic growth to all segments of the population? We may remember here one of the 6 characteristic features of growth mentioned by Simon Kuznets, which is the limited spread of growth to certain population of the world. Growth does not necessarily mean that it is equitably distributed to all segments of the population. We may also want to know how growth is measured. Friends, can growth be measured? Yes, growth can be measured by checking the growth rate of national income, capital formation, value of imports, exports, growth of employment, industrialization, etc. Growth models are presented by several experts, which we shall see subsequently. Let us now go through some more indicators to analyze the growth process of Indian economy. Let us look at the data for gross capital formation as a percentage of GDP at current market prices. Let us see the table here. We observe that since 1951-52 until 2014-15, the gross capital formation has continuously increased. Capital formation means an addition to the stock of capital in the country during an accounting year. The data here indicates a considerable rise. Do you think there are enough infrastructural facilities, electricity, internet facilities and so on for considerable modernization of the Indian economy? Now look at the employment statistics here. Employment in the public and private organized sector is presented in lakh persons in the table here. We see that the total employment in the year 2006 was 269.9 lakh persons, which increased to 295 lakh persons in the year 2012. Would you consider this increase in the organized sector employment between the given years as a significant increase? Now, look at the data for male female employment. The female employment in the year 2006 was only 51.2 lakh persons in the organized sector against the male employment of 218.7 lakh persons. In the year 2012, the female employment was just 60.5 lakhs, while the male employment was 235.3 lakhs. How would you evaluate the difference in the employment statistics of females and males? Now, let us look at the number of employed persons in the unorganized sector. Once again, we see that in the year 2004-05, employment in the unorganized sector was 4,226.1 lakh persons, while in 2009-10, the employment in the unorganized sector was 4,604.2 lakh persons. What do you conclude from the statistics for employment in the organized and the unorganized sectors? What is the difference between employment in the organized and the unorganized sectors? Can we ask ourselves here if reduction in absolute poverty is an indicator of growth? Can we look for the distribution of national income between different percentile groups of India's population and the distribution of productive assets of the country between businesses? Now, let us look at the external sector. In the table, we see India's trade balance. Trade balance is the value of merchandise exports minus the value of merchandise imports. In the year 1951-52, the trade balance was negative. In the year 1991-92, it was again negative. In the year 2015-16, we see that the trade balance is again negative. In other words, in all the years which we see here, India's trade balance has always remained negative. This data shows that we have imported more merchandise than what we have exported. Imports of technology, capital, fuel, spare parts, know-how help our businesses to grow, and imports of consumer goods increase the consumer welfare. But the deficits we see in the table are met by borrowings. Can you check the negative impacts of external borrowings? Dear students, can we draw a summary of today's lecture? What have we learnt? We may summarize today's lecture as: economic growth pertains to improvement in economic parameters. Simon Kuznets gave 6 characteristics of the historical growth process of countries and indicated that quantitative changes do not essentially lead to qualitative changes. Ideological, social, attitudinal transformation along with economic and technological changes is necessary to ensure welfare. What should we remember so far? Economic growth is manifested by quantitative increases in economic parameters and is reflected in the national income. Growth does not directly lead to increased welfare. Growth along with qualitative changes and transformation leads to increase in welfare. Concepts of economic growth and economic development are not synonymous.